Where's long? Okay. Hey, Donnie, where are you going? That's okay. We're going to wait for you. No, I'm just kidding. Well done. Okay, I wanted to talk tonight a little bit about the avoida, and I'm using that word bidafka, of HaKarat HaTov. Usually we'll think of it as a midah, and it is. It's a midah, but it's also very much an avoida. It's something to work on. It's something that we all need to work on. And we'll discuss that. That's what we're hopefully, Mir Hashem, discuss together over the next few minutes. Probably the most troubling, personally, probably the most troubling pasuk that I came across this week's parsha, was bothering me a lot, is Vayakam el Chadash al Mitzrayim Asher lo yadas Yosef. Well, the pasuk itself was fine, that's the truth. But it's the Rashi that we all know, makes it very hard to understand. Right? Vayakam el Chadash al Mitzrayim, there was a new king who didn't know Yosef. So if we were just reading the pasuk, it's fine. We all know, okay, it's a new king. He didn't know Yosef, and he did what he went on to do. There's always new people come to power, not always like the ones before them. We've seen that throughout our history. Ayin Sham in the Rosh Yeshiva Shir today, the Schmooze today, what are you going to call it? No, not Schmooze, this is the Schmooze. That was Drasha, fine. But, of course, it could be the most famous Rashi al-Chumash, I'm not sure. There's it goes like the top three, Kisha Chad Bleidacha, maybe is one of them. But this one also, yeah? The Rashi says, Vayakom el Chadash, Rav Shmuel, Chadamar Chadash Mamish. One says it was actually, when it says Chadash, it actually means Chadash. That he was nischadish his gzeirus, that it was the same power that we always knew, the same one that we were introduced to in Sefer Bereshis, but he started creating new gzeirus. Okay? If you look at the Gemara that's on this, there's two places in Shas where this comes up. One is in Eruvin Nun Gimel, the other one's in Saito Yud Aleph. Those are only two places in Shas where this Rav and Shmuel that they're referring to in Rashi come up. And it says the following, a little bit more than what Rashi tells us. We have Rav and Shmuel. Chadam or Chadash Bamish. One says it's a brand new king. No, it's the same power that we always knew, but he was Mechadish new Gzeris. And the Gemara goes on to ask on the Shitas, mainly on the Shita who says that it's not a new king. How does he make that work with the Psukim? Because the pasuk, right? So Mandam or Chadash Bamish Tichsiv Chadash, right? The one who says Chadash Bamish is because the Torah actually says V'yakim Melech Chadash al Mitzrayim. So it makes sense to say there's a new king. But Umandam or Shishchach Gzeraisav, according to the one who says that this is just the same power with new Gzeris, where is he coming from? The Gemara says Vayamas Vayimloch. It doesn't say that he died. We don't see anywhere that it said he died and then there's a new king. So we could assume maybe therefore there's a reason to assume that it's the same power that we had before. But according to the one who says that's this mandam that we're asking on, the one who says that he made new gzeros. But it says Asher lo yadas Yosef. How does it make sense if he didn't? It says he didn't know Yosef. It says Asher lo yadas Yosef to have a command de lo yada lo Yosef klal. It's as if it became like he didn't know Yosef at all. Ad Kan the Gemara, 2 dots, both places in Shas, it stops like that. Good. If I would have been writing the Gemara, which is a good thing I wasn't, but if I was writing the Gemara, I would have asked the following question, which is, I thought the Gemara would have continued. Umika kiyai gavna, is it possible? Is it shaykh that someone, how does this happen? Is it possible that a person could know Yosef and knew everything that Yosef did for him, and everything that Yaakov and Yosef and all his brothers, and they brought only, Yosef saved his kingdom, saved Paro, did everything he could for him, and he not only slaps him in the face, he tries destroying his people. And if it's the same guy, how could that be? The Gemara is not bothered by it. The Gemara doesn't ask the question. So what's pshat? How does that happen? So Rav Moshe Feinstein explains something very, very powerful, and it helps us understand the concept of HaKarat HaTov. Rav Moshe says that when it comes to HaKarat HaTov, a lot of us think of it as a natural quality or a natural thing that we just do. It's a response. It's a natural response that we are just given. And you say thank you, or you feel it and you want to give thanks. Says Rav Moshe, we see from here that's not the case. It's not something which is biteva of the person. It's not a natural thing that the person has. Rather, HaKarat HaTov is actually something which, it's an avodah, it's something to work on. It's something you have to constantly work on. And it's integral to our Avodas Hashem. We'll discuss that in a second. How that, in a few minutes, we'll discuss why it's integral to our Avodas Hashem. But before we get to that, the aleph is that we have to know is that when it comes to HaKarat HaTov, it's not something which just happens naturally. A person can go through their life and totally not be makbid, being kafui tov, and they can get to the level where they don't even, like Pharoah, as low as it gets, where he was so low in this area that he didn't even have any problem. He didn't even have a contradiction in himself, in his life, with going and after Yosef passes away, going, I'll wipe the people out. Lahavdil, just to show how low he actually had gone, is it's painful to bring anything positive from Nazi Germany, but just want to bring a contrast to Pharoah for a second. There's a well-known story, maybe not so well-known actually, but hopefully soon will become well-known, that, because now we're on Yedid HaMelech's website, for those of you watching, and our millions of viewers. So, okay, I was going to give him a call up, but we'll leave it for another time. Anyway, so not in Yedid HaMelech, but in this story, the following thing happened. There was actually, it's a true Maisa, there was a Chassidish Rebbe, not of a famous Chassidus, so we're not going to, it's not, not one of the famous ones we've heard. We'll call him the Rebbe, the certain Rebbe from a town called Danzig. And before the war, he had a little kahila, this was common in Europe, very common to have a small little, shtetl and a small Chassidus. And he used to, every day he had the same thing where he'd come back from Shacharis, and he would be accompanied by his son-in-law, and this Rebbe had, the proper Rebbe shaluk with the, the nice bekisha and whatever, the nice scarf, the whole thing, and a very nice fancy cane. And every day, this at the same time, let's go at 7:30 in the morning, he was walking back from Shacharis, and on his way back, he would see the same people, because it was the same time every day. And eventually he got to a rhythm, it was a routine where he would say hello to this person and hello to this person. And there's this one guy who lived there who he'd always say to him, who was working out in front of his factory, and the Rebbe would always see him, and the Rebbe would always say, he would say to him, good morning, Herr Muller. Herr, for those of us who are German here, Swiss, is Mr. Herr. Okay, sorry, Herr. For those of you from Germany watching this, Herr. So anyway, Mr. Muller, he would say to him, and then he would say to him, good morning, or good morgen, Herr Rabbiner. Good morning, Mr. Rabbi. And this happened daily. It was a daily cute thing. They would wave, smile, zeh, adkan. Fast forward 5-7 years, let's say later. This had been going on for a bunch of years. And of course, as we all know, unfortunately, the Holocaust broke out, and obviously this Rebbe was no longer making the stride anymore. And his family was deported. And this Rebbe was finally in one of the camps, and while he's at the camp, the guard there in the front, the one who's pretending to be God and choosing who gets to live, who gets to right, live, left, you're going to die, was a very familiar voice to this Rebbe, and he's getting closer and closer. He had just got off the train, but he recognized that voice, and he knew exactly what it was. And as he's getting closer and closer and closer, he without missing a beat, he said, even though he didn't want to do it, but it was just so natural for him, he said, good morning, Herr Muller. Good morning, Mr. Muller. And with Mr. Muller, it was so natural for him, he said back, good morning, Herr Rabbiner. Good morning, Mr. Rabbi. Now, then, all of a sudden, this SS guard realized at the moment what he was just caught himself in, and was caught with a dilemma. Because on one hand, this is a guy that I've known we used to do this for so long, but on the other hand, this is a totally different life, this is not my role, and I hate these people. And this Rebbe said that for whatever reason, at that moment, this Nazi guard decided that he was overcome with the emotion of, he used to say hello to me, and he told him, go to the right, and that's how he lived. And he said over, obviously his point very often was about how one good morning saved his life, but you could even see that this guard was stuck with a dilemma of like a little bit of a HaKarat type that he had to have. It was hard for him, and he didn't want to do it, but he ended up doing it. Yet Pharoah, not. There was no problem with it. There was no issue at all. Mashgiach came. We know that when it comes to the tzaddikim, Chazal tell us that Moshe Rabbeinu would be the best example, right? Moshe Rabbeinu gave a HaKarat to even inanimate objects. Right? Famously, next week's parsha, we're going to see obviously that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't the one who was striking, wasn't striking the Yaor, and he also didn't do the ground because both of them had saved him. The Yaor saved him when he was a baby, and the ground because it covered the Egyptian, and then Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't found. So Moshe Rabbeinu, because of that, didn't want to strike it with a stick. We see mikatz el katze. Rashi there says, "Lefi shehegin hayor al Moshe kishenishlach misaychay lefikach lo'lak al yadai." He couldn't do it because since he was saved, he couldn't do it. It saved him. Now we all know, obviously, we're not. Everyone knows this. The water or the ground had no intention, no kavana in saving Moshe Rabbeinu. In fact, it didn't do anything. Moshe Rabbeinu used it it was used by him, but it had absolutely nothing to do with anything. Yet Moshe Rabbeinu still felt that he needed to show HaKarat HaTov. There's a Gemara Bava Kama on Tzadi Beis, says a line which is al derech zeh. It says, "Bira deshasis minei maya." If you have a bore or a pit or a well where you drink water from, al tishadi bekala. Don't throw a rock or mud into it. Why? We know there's also a halach in Orach Chaim in Siman Kuf Pei. Halacha Dalet. Again, sorry, I'm trying to get to your day soon. This is again Orach Chaim. I apologize. So, but there's a halacha of ein oyvin ala eichel. Even if you're walking and you see that there's an eichel on the ground, even if it wasn't thrown by you, there's a halacha because it's bizayin to the food that you should walk over it, not supposed to walk over food. So we see this concept over and over again of us having this HaKarat HaTov to inanimate objects which are things which clearly it's not for them. So what's it about? We have to discuss. Famously, Rav Gustman, people probably have heard of Rav Gustman, I assume. If not, we can talk about him after. But Rav Gustman used to have a yeshiva over here in Yerushalayim, not so far away. Anyone who's been on a chul from Ban and Ibn Ezra knows there's a shul there today called Netzach Yisrael, but it used to be his yeshiva, Netzach Yisrael. And over there, Rav Gustman was well known for every morning doing after Shacharis. Everyone would see him, not learning, but actually going and watering the plants in front of the yeshiva. So people asked him, why is the Rav watering the plants? So he said, I'll tell you why. He said, because when I was and this part is already just before I get to the HaKarat HaTov, this story is wild. But he said when I was in Europe, so before the war, Rav Gustman actually in his 20s became a dayan on Rav Chaim Ozer Grudzinski's Bezdin, very young age. And Rav Chaim Ozer in Vilna would often take these walks around Vilna, and one time a couple of times actually, uncharacteristic of Rav Chaim Ozer to talk outside of learning, while they're walking, Rav Chaim Ozer commented and said to him, by the way, you see that bush over there? That one's edible. And you see that one? That one's actually poisonous. And do you see those berries? I wouldn't eat those. But he never asked Rav Chaim Ozer, why are you telling me this? Because he just soaked in everything his Rebbe told him, like we do here so nicely in Yedid HaMelech. So, but the idea is, he didn't know what it was about. You fast forward a couple years later, unfortunately, Rav Chaim Ozer was nifter, and Rav Gustman finds himself in the middle of the Churban of Europe. And Rav Gustman was hiding. And he was saved because while he was hiding in a forest, he was eating from the fruits and the vegetables that he was able, the little vegetation that he knew that Rav Chaim Ozer had told him beforehand, which things are good, which are not good. He knew which ones to have, which was not to have. And he was saved through that. But when he got to Yerushalayim, of course, it's not the same plant, not even the same species or whatever, but he still felt the need that he has to water it to show HaKarat HaTov to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for him with the plants. So the two nukudas that I just want to, the next couple of minutes, try to understand better is, why is HaKarat HaTov so integral to our Avodas Hashem? And then the second thing, after we establish why it's so important, how do we work on it? So there's a medrash in this week's parsha that talks about Rabbeinu Bechaya in this week's parsha brings a medrash that explains the chashivas of HaKarat HaTov and what happens if someone doesn't have it. Actually, on this pasuk that we were describing about Paro, it says Vayakom melech chadash al Mitzrayim asher lo yada es Yosef. Excuse me. Yeah, and he says Darshu Chazal. Yeah, 1 second. Sorry, I apologize. No, here it is. Here we go. Uvimedrash asher lo yadas Yosef. He says, Kol hakoifer b'toivasoi shel chaveroi. If someone doesn't have a HaKarat HaTov to his friend, he's koifer b'tov, meaning he denies what his friend did for him. Soifoi sheyichbor b'toivasoi shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That will, so what will happen is he'll end up denying and not being makar tov to Hashem. That Pasuk says this Paro, going with now with the pshat that it's the same Paro that he didn't know Yosef, but it was what happened. In Schmooze and Parakeh it says Lo yadati es Hashem. Paro ended up saying I don't know Hashem. From when if you're not makar tov to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you're not makar tov to your friend on a day-to-day basis, it will cause you b'soif not to be makar tov to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rav Dessler explains, similarly to this Ravina Bechaya, that the side of HaKarat HaTov is that it's one of the most important chalakim of Avodas Hashem. Because HaKarat HaTov, he says, is something which causes us, when we're makar tov to our friends, that will cause us also to be aware and thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu alachas kama v'kama for all the things that he does for us. But if a person is not makar tov to his friend, then he won't be able to properly have the proper hakara of thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you might ask why. Maybe you could say, listen, I don't really care what my friend does for me, but I can still be makar tov to Hashem. So Reb Nachum Zev from Kelm, which I think was the father-in-law of Reb Dessler, I'm not positive, he said that he explains that the way a person works is he goes based off of his natural tendencies. However you are accustomed to be, that's how you're going to always be. Like a guy who's always, let's say a guy is a kassan, he's always angry. So as much as he tries to not be, his kas is going to come out in his day-to-day interactions, and things that are going to be slow, things that wouldn't trigger other people will trigger him. If a guy's about gaiva, a person who has a lot of arrogance, so the arrogance is something which is it's going to come up whenever there's a chance for him to get a little bit, feeling good about himself, so that's what's going to happen. And the same thing when it comes to being makar tov and kafui tov. If a person trains himself by other people to not recognize the good that other people do for you, so then the same thing is going to happen with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Naturally, you're not going to be able to just distinguish and make that distinction. So therefore, when it comes to our Avodas Hashem, we have to chap that it's not just an inyan just to be nice to you. It's not just ben adam l'chaveru to be makar tov. It's actually something which is going to be, it's integral to us being makar tov to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Fine. But then you might ask, okay, so then how do I work on it though? How can I work on being a HaKarat HaTov if maybe it's something which is just, some people are better at it, some people aren't so good at it. So Rav Dessler actually explains something which is very deep. And it's not the pashut way I would have thought of how someone's makar tov. He says, there's two types of people. There's a noitel, someone who likes to just take, and then there's a nosein, someone who likes to give. He says the bigger the bal chesed you are, and the bigger you are at giving, then the better you are at being makar tov. Why? So he explains how it works. Because a person who's a nosein, a person who likes to give to others, it's hard for him to receive. Right? If you always want to do chesed, always want to give others, you're not going to receive. So therefore, when someone does give to you, your immediate reaction of the nosein is, I want to give back to him. This is uncomfortable. Like he's giving to me, I want to give back to him. Say if you have something on you, you want to give it to him. If you don't have something on you, you'll be makar tov. You'll say with words something. I want to give something back to you because it's not natural for me just to be receiving. But the notel, the one who always just receives and receives and receives, his nature is, this is great. Like this is what I want. Give it to me. Like he's naturally thinks magili. It comes to me. He doesn't feel that need to go and give over to somebody else to give back. So for the more we work on our chesed, actually, believe it or not, the more we work on being a nosen and giving to others, that actually helps us be makar tov and to want to give back because you're always thinking about ways to help other people. So when someone gives you, you're going to want to give back to him. So obviously, Paro in this example we were discussing from the beginning was the biggest noitel you could imagine. He only was about himself. Everything was about him. Didn't care about anyone else. So it was very natural, just because Yosef did this big tayva for him, Magiali, so I don't owe anything back to him, so it doesn't hurt him. It wasn't not hard for him at all. Masha Einkein, Moshe Rabbeinu was the biggest nosein. He was an anav, and he only wanted to give to Klal Yisrael. So if someone wants to give, it's the hardest thing for them just to take. They want to give back. One of the biggest ways you could tell if someone's a nosein or a noitel is not whether they say thank you or not. Because unfortunately, we're trained all to say thank you, but it doesn't mean you actually mean it. It doesn't mean you actually want to give. So how can you tell? There's a couple distinctions. So one of the biggest examples is actually by the inanimate object. I'm not saying we should all be, that's when we're all holding this madriga, but only a nosein, only someone who's a nosein like Moshe Rabbeinu would ever think of giving thanks to an inanimate object, because it comes from, because the nosein feels, I don't care what the person's objective or who it is, I just need to give back. It's something that overcomes them. A more relatable example would be with somebody that you expect anyways to give to you. For example, let's say someone's parents. So very often there's a feeling when it comes to parents that it's natural, it's like minateva, they gave birth to me, so they owe it to me kind of. They have to pay for my stuff because like they're not doing it for me, they're doing it for themselves, like they have to do. So people feel, because it's what they have to do, therefore, I don't really owe them any HaKarat. Why should I think of my parents? But that's what a notel does. A noisein, someone who's a noisein, he chaps that it doesn't matter what the impetus of causing this person to give to me is. If someone's giving to me, I can't. It's uncomfortable for me just to be receiving. I need to give back. Same thing with any other person that's in a role of a job where they have to do what they're doing anyways, like a janitor or a bus driver or anything else. A rebbe, very good. Not guy giving the schmooze. But anyone like that is someone that anyone who's in a role, actually a rebbe is one of the people they mentioned, is one of the top examples, teacher. But is anyone who's in a role of giving, sometimes we feel, okay, so it's magiali, but we have to train ourselves that no, it doesn't matter whether they're doing it or not for their own reasons or not, it doesn't matter. If I received, I want to give back. I want to end off with a maisa. An amazing maisa of how we can learn such a high madriga of HaKarat HaTov. There's a great story with Rav Shach. Rav Shach once called up his grandson, and he asked his grandson, "Can you meet me in front of my house today at, let's say, 1 o'clock? I have to go to Levaya. And Rav Shach didn't go alone. Can you order a cab for us and we'll go together?" And he said, "Of course." So the grandson comes to the house. He helps Rav Shach down, and the cab comes, and they get into the car, and grandson was not aware of where they're going, where this Levaya is, so the cab driver asked, "Where are we going?" And he said, "We're going up to Haifa." Okay, it's a far trip. He figured it must be like some big tzaddik that he wasn't aware of. It was nifter that Shach has to be at. And they drive up probably 2 hours north, and they get to Haifa. And at this Levaya, something not very common, not a very normal occurrence for Shach, there was about barely a minyan at this Levaya. And the grandson said, okay, didn't ask any questions. It's his grandfather. They're staying at the Levaya, and Rav Shach was there, mitchila v'atzayif. He was there for all the hespedim. And after the hespedim, he was also there for the kvura. And I didn't mention this was an elderly lady. It was not a big rebbe. It was an elderly lady. But Rav Shach was there, mamash mitchila v'atzayif. And even after they buried her, Rav Shach, it was actually raining and it was dark. It was raining nighttime now. Rav Shach stood over the kever, and the grandson was waiting. He was actually the last one there. And while it was raining, he waited there over the kever, and then they went back in the car. So the grandson was expecting at this point, he was waiting just to hear the details of this. Shach actually made no mention of why they were there. So after a few minutes, we only know the story thanks to the grandson. He said, Zaidi, what was this all about? Like, who was this? So he said, let me tell you. When I was a bacher in Europe, things were not like the way it is today, where everyone gets a spot in a dorm. Pretty nice dorms we have here in Yedida Melech. And there's a lot of different, today where you get food, he said, I came, and in Europe, the way it worked is if you were there in the yeshiva for long enough, you get a spot in a bed in someone's house or something like that, and if there was any dorm, maybe some spot. But I was the youngest bacher there was no way I was getting any spot there, so I was sleeping on a bench in the yeshiva. And this went on for a couple of weeks and a couple of months, and finally, it was just so cold. In Europe, it's freezing. It gets freezing. And he said it was so cold at night, I had nothing with me, and it was just getting very hard for me. And I got a letter to the yeshiva. I got a personally addressed letter from my uncle. Now, Rav Shach's uncle had a successful business, and he told Rav Shach, this person did not have any children, and he said to Rav Shach, I'm looking to retire, I'm getting older, and I want to give the business over to you, and I want to give you over, and this will be like your parnasa. I want to know that I'm giving it over to you, so you'll be taken care of. And Rav Shach said he made the decision that day that he's going, because this is just too much. It's freezing, he's uncomfortable, he doesn't feel like he's being taken care of. And he said, okay, I'm going to go tomorrow. When I wake up, I'm going to go. He's ready. He's going to go on the train straight to where this uncle lives. That night, a lady walks in to the yeshiva, and she says her husband just passed away. And she says, because my husband used to had a huge factory where he made blankets. He passed away, the factory we're not using anymore. I want to donate these blankets to the yeshiva. And Rav Shach was one of the beneficiaries of a blanket from this lady. And he said he put the blanket around him, and it was warm that night. He said, you know what, maybe I can stay in yeshiva a little bit longer. Like, I can handle it. And he said, because of that blanket from this lady, that I stayed in yeshiva, and that we have the Sefer Avi Ezri, that Rav Shach is who he was. And it was only thanks to what she gave us. And Rav Shach said, I was always kept the tabs on this lady, because I always wanted to be makar tov to what she did. It's because of her that I was able to stay in yeshiva and become I was able to be. So my bracha is that we should be zoicha to continue to work on our avodas Hashem, but work specifically through our HaKarat, HaTov, work on being makar tov to our friends and to Kadosh Baruch Hu, ultimately. Hashem.
We really hope that you're able to grow and enjoy with this amazing content that we just put together. Do us a favor. Don't just make it about you and me. Share this with the world. Get that Torah out there for everyone to see. Additionally, if you want to hear more, which we hope you do, you can subscribe to our content so that you can be up to date with all of the new amazing Torah that we have here in the yeshiva, pumping it out to you as the klal.